All right, welcome to another episode here of Captive to Independent. We are very excited to have Tracy here with us, who is actually in Michigan and is going to have a more of an experience from the life annuity side than kind of the traditional episodes you've seen with PC agents. So I'm really excited to hear about your journey from captive to independent and what led you to those decisions and some of the things you learned along the way to be able to help some of the viewers here on their journey as well. So thank you so much for being willing to do this and take your time to share your experience.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm super excited. Let's do it.
Yeah, awesome. So let's just start kind of at the beginning. So before insurance, before you were with Bankers Life, we'll kind of put that out there. But before you joined them, what did you do? What was your jobs before?
Yeah, people are always like, how the heck did you make this transition? So I went to school and got a bachelor, and I actually was a certified police officer. So went through the police academy, became a certified cop. That did not pan out for me. During that time, actually, I joined the military as well. So I served 8 years in the United States Army. And when I decided that the cop stuff wasn't for me, it was just a really bad time to be a cop. And there was really odd jobs going on, and I didn't want to go out of state. So I was like, you know what? I need to find something different. So somebody told me that I've always been maybe good communication with people and always been a people person. So I started looking at like sales jobs. Went on Indeed. I saw their advertisement. I saw like what all I was looking for was a decent paying job. So it's like, oh, you can make this much, which was, always blown up. Like you can make $100,000 your first year. And I was like, oh, cool. That sounds good.
Basically, if you don't eat, sleep, or do anything else.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So studied for my license, interviewed. Obviously, they took anybody who breathes. Studied for my license, failed my first time, and then passed a week later, and off to it I went.
Okay, awesome. So I love that. First of all, thank you for your service in the military. Appreciate that so much. Yeah, we need more great people that can serve for sure, especially now. It seems like that's a problem. My sister's military as well.
Yeah, it is.
And sales, like leading into sales, that's a very interesting. What was it about? Just it was the fact that you had kind of those people skills that made you think sales would be a good fit.
Yeah, I've always been a car guy. I've always loved just like unique things about cars and modern and old and whatever. So I actually wanted to go that route and go into car sales. My uncle was, and he was really good at it. My cousin was, and he was really good at it. My sister was, she was really good at it. But the car dealership was like, no, we want to put you in like the wash bay, where you go and wash the vehicles first and like work your way up. I'm like, I got a 4-year degree. I'm not washing cars. Like, come on. Like, so that's why I went into like other sales jobs. I was just looking for a job where, the harder I worked, the more I could make, right? I always hated that with jobs, but it's like, okay, I'm working harder than everybody else, not all the time. And it's like I'm making the same amount or I'm making less. It's like, that's not fair.
Yeah, no, I totally hear you there. So Bankers Life, when you saw the ad, obviously the salary was kind of inflated, but when you started digging in and talking to these guys, what were some of the things that you were told that sounded good, that you liked about that opportunity?
Well, it was definitely unique. I had no experience on that side. So everything that they told me sounded good. Things like, you're going to be part of a team, right? And a lot of it was just numbers. They try to sell you on numbers. Like, they talk through like, their average commission on sales and how often people are making sales and how much time you put in, the fact that there was really little overhead and they kind of supplied everything to you. And I thought that was kind of cool. They sold me on like the process of, if you do this, you will get this, right? And for the most part, I would say that it wasn't a lie, but it was not as cut and dry as they wrote it out to be.
Okay. So after things sounded good, they gave you some good numbers, you got started, you started selling. How did that go? Did you hit your goals? Like, what was that like?
Yeah, so in their model, and I don't know if it's still this way today, but when you're a rookie agent, I think it's your first year, you get a multiplier on like the annual premium you submit. So I maxed out my multiplier. I don't remember what it was, how much they give you, but I maxed that out. So it was essentially free money. It was almost like a 401k match in a sense. I maxed that out. I hit in my first 6 months, I did hit 50,000 in commission, or maybe it was 7 months, which made me the top rookie agent in the region, which was like 3 or 4 states. So I did really well. I'd never made that amount of money before. I did well, but I also worked incredibly hard. I was behind a sales trainer. Essentially, I was shadowing them, and it was about 3 weeks of shadowing where they just threw me into the wolves. And I will say this, something that they did that I appreciated was I thought the training was actually pretty good, from not qualitative training necessarily, but just like the sales side of it. Like there's still one-liners and things I still use today. And then just the go get it attitude and camaraderie. I did like that. But I do feel now that I was more practicing on people, which is not something you want to do when you're, helping them. Granted, when it's insurance, health insurance can be replaced, life insurance can be replaced. So if you made mistakes, it's not the end of the world. But we did write some annuities, and if I could go back and replace those, I definitely would.
Oh man, yeah. So that learning on the job, maybe for those looking for a financial advisor, if you're working with someone new, make sure they have a mentor. Maybe that's a good piece of advice, not to disparage new advisors, but make sure you have someone checking your stuff. That's for sure. So, I mean, it sounds like you were really successful. You were working really hard. You were hitting goals. You were maxing out bonuses. How long were you at Bankers Life?
So I was there for about 8 months. And I remember specifically there was a time where I had to hit this like monthly bonus, and it was the last day of the month, and I really wanted it, and I needed like 150 AP. And it was, I'm dialing, I can't get people to pick up and whatnot. And it's like 4 o'clock. And this lady picks up, and she's 3 hours away from me, and she will not talk to me over the phone. I said, you know what? I'll be there in 3 hours. I drove there. I sold her a $250 AP a year AP policy, broke even on the gas cost just so I could get that number. And I remember them taking and using that example to like their entire region. Like, this is what you do to be successful. And I actually heard from one of their agents now, they still use that. They just don't talk about me being the agent that did it.
Wow.
So,
yeah, that's crazy. I mean, that's an interesting example though, right? So as a company, you're saying you have to be willing to do anything and drive, that's a 6-hour drive back and forth.
Yeah.
So 6 hours of your time, these are the things you're have to be willing to sacrifice and do. And so I don't know. I mean, I think that's a huge example of the hustle, right? I mean, you're willing to do anything to hit your goals. But and if you think about some of the younger generations behind us, that might be a little hard of a sell these days for some of them, right? Yeah. There's a big shift in the workforce around the importance of our personal time. But that's amazing. So obviously you had the hustle. So 8 months. So I mean, you were there, you were making great money, you were hitting bonuses. Why did you leave? What happened?
When you're a captive agent, and not all captive agents sell one product necessarily, mm-hmm. Some of them do have options for other companies. We really didn't. It was one. It was Bankers Life products, and Colonial Penn was like their final expense. And I think on the Medicare side, they had like Humana. But that was it. And so I started to just get in front of people, and something I was sold on was the bill of goods I was sold on was that our rates are higher, but they don't go anywhere. They stay where they're at, right? So especially in the Medicare space, for those that are in the Medicare space, you go and you sell a Medicare supplement or a Medigap plan, those rates go up, okay? And something that you have to be aware of is when you sell them, what kind of rate integrity does that company have? If I sell it at $100 a month, what's it gonna do next year or 2 years or 3 years? Because sometimes you can't get out of those, or you can't switch over to another one, depending on health. Mm-hmm. So I had my first notice that there was going to be a policy increase. There was, it was 4 months is what they send you a notice that policies are going up. And so I got my first notice, and it was 11%, 9%, somewhere around there, between 9 and 11%. Okay. And they always told me that it was going to be between 3 and 4%. And that was like probably the icing on the cake. That was, hey, you sold me on this bill of goods. This is not what I'm seeing. So I started doing some digging, started digging really deep into Bankers Life, and just not liking what I'm seeing as far as rate integrity, rates in general. Just the fact that you are selling, if you're a car salesman and you work for Ford, you sell Fords, right? Unless one comes in on trade. I wanted to be like the CarMax. I wanted to be the cars.com. I wanted to be able to sell all the different types, because maybe Ford isn't right for them. And they weren't just selling a Ford. They were kind of just selling like one Ford truck. It wasn't even like they had the fleet of Fords. So I didn't like that. I wanted to always make sure that my client was in the best absolute product. And some people will say like, there's no one best product. I say BS. I think there is. It's just dependent on what you're willing to go do and research and look at for that specific situation. There's definitely going to be a best or maybe a couple bests. So I just wanted that, and I wasn't getting it there, which just made me start to think. So, and that's why I transitioned.
So, so you wanted to have more product options. There were some things about the company itself and the integrity there that didn't really align with your values and how you wanted to be able to treat your customers. I mean, I think that you probably couldn't outline better reasons to make a shift, right? I mean, we'll talk to agents with all sorts of different reasons, but when you have your client's best interest really at heart and willing to leave something that's been your most lucrative position and you're, being the example for the company over that's a lot of integrity to have and a really high code of ethics. So after Banker's Life, so when you knew you were going to leave, how did that transition work? Like, how did you let the company know? How did they respond? What happened there?
Yeah. So essentially what I did was I went and I wrote 6 IULs for a family. So it was mom, dad, all kids, right? They weren't set up correctly. They weren't max funded like they should have been. I didn't know any of that. I was trying to get them life insurance, and that one was what I was told was good, and it had a good commission rate. So that's what I wrote. I found out that Bankers had these child life policies that were cheaper and made more sense. So I went back and I rewrote all the kids, and the couple said, we would have never known. Why'd you come back and do that? And it wasn't that much in premium cost, and it was like half the commission for me and 3 hours more work. And it was just, it's the right thing to do. If you were my family, I'd want to make sure it was the right thing to do. And they made good money, but it didn't matter. It didn't matter if they're billionaires or not. And they said, well, I want to introduce you to somebody, our cousin. He is in the financial services industry, and he has some job opportunities. And so I wasn't, I was not looking, but also kind of looking at the same time. I was like, you know what, why not? So sat down with him, had coffee. We really hit it off. He owned an RIA, registered investment advisory firm. And we had a couple meetings. He pretty much said, hey, you can come on board and I'll give you resources as far as connecting with the like IMOs and FMOs out there, and you can kind of do your own thing. I'll just take this amount of a cut. I'll pay for, a laptop for you. I'll pay for office expenses. And you just kind of do your own thing. And if you want to transition into managing money and doing that side, I'll teach you how to do it. So it sounded like a good gig. So what I did was I essentially sat down my boss and then my boss's boss, who managed 2 offices. And I said, yeah, I think I'm gonna probably head out here in like about a week and a half or 2 weeks. It was not a good meeting. They did not treat me well at all. It was like attack, made me feel very small. Made me feel like I was really making a horrible decision. But it didn't sway me. It made me feel like crap. And then, said things like, you'll never be successful outside of us. We've given you X, Y, Z, A, B, C, you're hitting all these big goals. And it was like, that didn't make me feel good. But I did it anyways. So when I ended up making that transition, what they did was that day they said, pack your stuff up. You can't just hang around here. And I had like a couple cases pending. I wanted to make sure I get paid on, and they're like, no, you're done. Like, even if you changed your mind, you'd still be done, because we don't know if you're ever going to leave again. So I had to pack my stuff up. I wasn't able to take like anything from the office, obviously, like no client data, nothing like that. I wasn't even able to take my notepad. They give you like a notepad that's branded to them. And so it's like, oh, that's actually ours. It's our brand. You can't have it. And I'm like, okay. So I left with, my pencils and my clipboard, and that was it. And then essentially like no income from that time moving forward. And then I had to call this guy up and say, hey, ready to go today. Let's get the process started. And then we did.
Wow. Dang. So I think I'm not happy. Let's belittle you and then kick you out the door.
Yeah.
Sounds like a great day. Well, I mean,
well, they were making money on me, they were making big overrides on me, and they didn't want that to go away. If I made 50 grand, I bet you that made them probably close to knowing their commission structure compared to some independent commission structures now, probably over 50 grand. I mean, I was probably at like a third of what their actual comp was.
Wow, dang. Because you said you were one of the top rookie agents in like a couple states, right?
Yeah, like 4 states.
4 states. Yeah. So
Yeah.
hard to see one of their new superstars leave for sure, but that's quite the tactic to try to get you to stay.
Yeah.
That's
I was actually
interesting.
I was breaking a company record. So if you hit, I don't remember what it was like 2,500 or maybe it was 3,000 AP each month, which now it's like, that's nothing, but for them, it's huge. If you hit it each month, the record was 17 divided by 2. It's 17 pay periods, which is 2 weeks. And I was like 1 away from it or something like that. I was very close to beating it. And I was on track to do all that, which would have been really cool. But never got that plaque, but I don't think I'd ever display it anywhere anyway, so that's okay.
So you called him up, you said, hey, I'm ready to go. And well, actually, I guess before that, you mentioned like you had to leave Banker's Life with nothing. So is there anything you would have done differently? Because I mean, obviously, I mean, it's like any other agent, you're usually marketing, right? I'm sure you had contact information and people you were trying to schedule appointments with and things like that. Did you lose all of that? Did you have any of that as a backup? Like even just your own marketing stuff?
No, so we used their specific like CRM, and everything flowed through them. So I don't know, every captive agency is different, but for them, they supplied like different levels of leads, and if you produced more, you got better leads, as what they said, and it all went through their CRM. So no, I really didn't really have anything. It was just starting completely from scratch. There was I remember having like one notepad that was mine that had a bunch of names and stuff in it that I was able to use. And then I did a seminar, a Medicare seminar, that I had a list of everybody who attended and signed up for it. And I had that too, but that was it.
Wow. Okay. So you call this registered rep, you say, okay, I'm ready to go. And did you have to do any additional licensing to work for him, or what happened next?
Yeah. So I'm gonna tell you what I did and then what I would have done differently.
Okay.
Right. So what I essentially from there, well, let me go back to answer your question. What would I have done differently to set up that? Well, for one, I wouldn't have told them right then and there, which stinks because you want to give them like a 2 weeks heads up. I was trying to do that, not realizing that, okay, it kind of makes sense. Like somebody's going to leave. We're providing sales information for them. It kind of makes sense that they kind of kicked me out that first day. I would have set it up in a way where I had all of my I's dotted, T's crossed, make sure that I had my own errors and emissions insurance paid for. I had started maybe contracting with the companies we were going to contract with, at least started that process, because sometimes it takes a while to get contracts approved and issued and all that. Those are just some of the little things. And then I would have probably set up like a marketing plan. Now, granted, I had absolutely no idea how to do that at the time, but looking back at it now, I would have figured it out. So I would have set up some type of lead flow marketing plan, partnered with a company, something, right? Just would have got that stuff going, and then transitioned out, right? I was actually just watching a YouTube reel this morning about a guy who went from Wall Street to owning his own firm, and he said that was something that he would have done, was like, don't quit your job, right? Like put feelers out and like try other things that you might think you like, and then go about it slowly, because there's a lot of anxiety and fear and financial hardship that you can incur when you go out on your own. There's a lot of upfront costs sometimes. So put a plan in place. I didn't have any kids at the time. I was newly married. Now I have 3 kids, and it's like, if having 3 kids now, a lot more expenses, it would drive me nuts. So everybody's situation is different. So from there, going on board with the RIA, yeah, there are things like my E&O insurance, or things like contracting with that company. There was, mostly just how do I get in front of people appropriately? And that was the hardest thing, because this gentleman knew nothing about insurance. He was a finance guy, he knew the annuity side, but so it was just kind of starting from scratch. So when you're starting from scratch, that snowball, you're just starting to make the little snowball. So it just takes time for that to get rolling. And that sometimes you have time or you have money. And I didn't have money, but I had time, but I needed money, right? So it was just like, what can I do to let's get this ball rolling? And sometimes you're just waiting on other companies, other people. There's not a lot you can do in certain stages, but staying busy. Sometimes you don't even know what you're doing, but just staying busy with learning products, learning how to implement them. Like, because you're now exposed to, you were selling one product, you're now exposed to hundreds, so they all have different benefits, different features, different company ratings, different financial statuses, different everything. So just start to dive into that stuff because you kind of need to know it. And then another thing was, when you started to contract with these companies, so as an independent, you have a different writing number with every different carrier you represent, right? Well, I only had one before. I had one login, one writing number. It was very easy. Well, now I have 30 logins, 30 writing numbers, and that's just if you're with 30 companies. Some companies have logins for like different and writing numbers for different products. You want to write an annuity? Oh, that's a login over here with this product. Oh, you want to view client data? Oh, that's a different login. Oh, you want to write life insurance? That's a different login, a different writing number. That's just one carrier. So you want to represent the best, right? So that was just so overwhelming. So things like, I don't know, a Google Sheet to track your writing numbers and license numbers and EINs and all of that, probably important to put into place. I just remember having to like call companies constantly, like, what's my writing number? I'm like in the middle of writing an app and I don't remember it. So those are things that people don't get. It's like, you better be organized.
Yeah, I think I would definitely agree with that. When I've worked with captive agents and independent agents, I work more on the P&C side, but the organization on the independent side is, no matter what you're selling, it's so much more important because there is no system they provide to you. There is no, here is all of your stuff, here is all your processes and your information, and one helpline to call. The accounting on the independent side is something that I see captive agents really struggle with because they're used to getting one commission check, maybe two, and now you're getting 5 or 10 or 30, depending on how many companies. There you go, right?
So sitting on my desk. There's art starting to roll in from last year. I think I probably
but you gotta
40 of them.
Exactly. But you got to reconcile all that, right? You got to make sure, and not that most of the companies are pretty good about it. And I've actually been told on the independent side, they're usually better than captive agents about making sure they calculate your commissions correctly, but it's still on you. If there's something missing that you don't get paid for, you're the one that's going to have to bring it to their attention and fight for that and 100%. Be able to track it. Definitely a lot more. I echo this a lot in discussions I have with agents that are considering the move. If you are really, really good at sales, but don't have good business skills, then you're probably not ready to go independent. Or you're going to be drinking from a fire hose, like you mentioned, right? Where's my login? Oh my gosh, I got to backtrack and get organized, just kind of baptism by fire. And that can be very stressful. And that can in itself push people out of the independent channel.
100%.
So being organized, being prepared, spend time, listen to books, read, take classes on business, so that you are ready to, because you really do call all the shots on the independent side. It's very different.
You do. Yeah. And there's different models too. And I think that's important to understand, is that independent isn't just independent. There's models to it, right? So are you okay if I go down that path real quick?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay,
of course.
Cool. So something that I didn't realize was that when I went under this RIA, I was a LOA, or writing agent, right? So you don't own that business when you're a writing agent or LOA unless it's written in some contractual agreement between you and them that if you were to ever leave, you can take it. Well, that wasn't the case between me and this guy. So when I went and I wrote business, it was all paid directly to him. So I can't even track commissions and make sure that they're accurate. I have to lean on him, right? And that was a big reason why I left him, was that wasn't happening. So understand that there are different models. If you're not ready to jump into completely independent, we call it a GA contract, a general agent contract, maybe you need some hand holding. It's not a bad thing to go LOA under somebody. Essentially, if they have a good system you can kind of plug into, they're going to walk you through it. They just kind of own your book, or maybe there's a vesting period behind it or whatever. That's not a bad model. We see a lot of, I would call them intrapreneurs, meaning that maybe you're not ready to be an entrepreneur, but you can be an entrepreneur inside of an organization and really want that to grow. That's awesome. And some people are meant to do that. There are a lot of 1099 agents that are not entrepreneurs. They're very much employees and they act like employees, and that's okay. I'm not knocking that model. You just have to know what is right for you, right? I personally don't like the employee model. I could never be an LOA. I am too free spirited, don't want the rules, don't want to follow the rules. That's how I am, right? So get that right before you make that leap as well. Make that decision as to, okay, do I want to go writing agent or LOA model? Do I want to go completely GA? So as a GA model, essentially you're owning your book of business. You're getting paid directly from the carriers. If you're not getting paid from the carrier, you don't own your book of business. That's not how that works, right? So if you find yourself, oh, I'm independent, but man, I get paid by my upline, and you just be careful, right? That's something you want to be aware of.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And when you say that 1099, and you're kind of acting like an employee, it's, there's some freedom in that, right? You don't have all of the operating expenses, potentially like the office expenses and the marketing and, all of the different changes that are coming down from the companies that you're dealing with and making those decisions on what carriers are going to represent, things like that. So there is some freedom in that. But again, you don't have as much control, like you mentioned. So really being honest with yourself and your personality, your skills, where you are in this process. When I became a farmer's agent, I just thought, okay, that's it. I'm going to be farmer's agent until I retire. I'll, my son, I was thinking, man, maybe my son will want this business one day. I was thinking it was going to last 30, 40 years, lasted 9, but that's okay. So you just never know. But I mean, in that moment, I was extremely all in and owned 2 different agencies. And so sometimes taking a step back and realizing that, like, yes, I'm somewhere, but that doesn't mean that this is going to be forever, because the company changes, you change, you grow, your skills adapt, what you want to take on is going to adjust as well. So just be in the mindset of being open-minded in this industry, because there is a ton of opportunity and a ton of different paths, as you mentioned. So you said you left that advisor. One of the reasons you said was commission tracking and such. Was there any other things where you were kind of like, this isn't maybe where I want to stay for a long term?
Yeah. So we definitely jived on the personal side, on the spiritual side, a couple different sides. And I worked for him for about 1.5 years. And something was that he really wanted me to do manage money. And at the time, I did not care for math. I did not like math. I did not like managing or managing somebody's assets. So my situation was a little bit different. He ended up paying me a salary as an LOA to go and study. I studied. I ended up failing my 65 by like 9 points, and then was going to go back and retake it. And we kind of had a heart-to-heart. And he was like, you don't want to do this, dude. And I was like, no, I have been telling you I don't want to do this. And he's like, all right, then just keep doing what you're doing. I'll take overrides. Don't pay me back. And over time, you'll pay me back. And I was like, cool. And it was, I think, probably about 2 months later, I had a really bad situation where he flat outright stole a commission from me. And in my first annuity sale ever, on my own, he ended up sweeping in, taking it, using my personal relationship with this person as leverage. It was a bad situation, and ended up taking like $8,500 from me. When I asked him about it, he essentially said, pack your bags, you're gone. So he actually fired me. So
wow.
This would have been November 22nd, 2019. Okay. So what happened in 2020? So a couple months later, COVID hits. I had my EIN, I had my LLC established, I had all my carriers ready to go by January 1st. So I was like ready to go. COVID hits. And then I changed my practice completely virtually and ended up probably about 6xing my highest revenue year ever that year, virtually. And since then, have been virtually ever since.
Wow. That's quite the journey. I guess that's maybe one drawback to being a 1099 under someone else, like a sub producer, basically, that they could end that contract. And you have the same risk with carriers. I mean, if you're not doing right by carriers, they can pull contracts too, but there's other carriers, right? So you wouldn't really want to have an agency with just one. So a lot more stability and control there. Very interesting that he let you go. So you got all set up, you're ready to go. I mean, and you said you switched to virtual. So you planned on being in person?
Yeah, I was in person up to that point. I was doing all in-person seminars, paid seminars and free seminars, essentially cold calling. That was what I did. I did some mailers as well, but not a lot. And when COVID hit, I think I had this unique opportunity to say, okay, people are home, so let's try some different marketing. And so I reached out to a big mail house called Lead Concepts, and I said, hey guys, I want to drop a big mailer, and I want to do what's the best way to do it? And I wanted to hit on Medicare. So I dropped, oh gosh, I want to say my first drop was 30,000 And I had money saved up to that point, right? So 30,000 mailers cost me probably like 15 grand. And I dropped that and I was selling probably like 5 to 10 policies a day for months.
Wow.
Just essentially picking up the phone, calling these people, getting a hold of most of them and selling it right over the phone within, 20 minutes, and then just dialing all day long. So I was getting like a 6.5% return on my mailers, which is wild. If anybody's ever done mailers before, they're now like under 2%. So I got lucky, or blessed, I guess. And I ended up dropping about 45,000 mailers for the whole year, and just absolutely crushed it. Built up a giant Medicare book of business in a very short period of time, probably somewhere around like 600 to 800 clients. And mostly I would attribute it to trial and error, but also the fact that Banker's Life, I did dial a lot when I was there. I dialed, $150 to $200 a day. So my phone skills up to that point were pretty good, and I didn't realize it. So when I started making sales over the phone, I was like, this is interesting. So I don't have to drive anywhere from half hour to 4 hours to go see somebody, go make a couple $100. I could do it right over the phone. And I definitely went through some compliance issues going back. And I was like, ooh, probably should have done that differently. But looking back at it now, those are some things that you want to be aware of as well. So yeah, it was fun. It was a lot of fun. Had a good time. But again, I was all in. I was all in. I wasn't messing around. I knew I was going to be successful because there's no other way I could have went.
So are you still doing Medicare to this day? Or when you went out on your own, you did Medicare life and annuities. Is that correct initially?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
And,
so I'm not doing Medicare anymore. I just sold my Medicare book of business this year. The only thing that I focus on is I do financial planning in general, focusing mostly on the annuity side, and then IUL when it fits. And then we just partner with CPAs, attorneys, money managers. So I'm kind of all in on the. I almost tell people I'm like an actuary. I look so much into details now. It's so funny. I hated math, failed almost every math class, didn't want to be a financial advisor, didn't want my license. Now it's like all I do is math and actuary and Excel formulas, and I'm so nerdy on that side. So it's just funny how when you see that you're not, you don't have somebody's thumb over you and you can kind of do things the way you want to do it, how you can almost develop a passion for something. And now I'm like obsessed. So.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. When I always joke with people, because I obviously work in the automation and tech stuff now, I joke with people that I was like the last person on the planet to join Facebook. I was not, I'm from a very small town. Tech was not a thing. We barely kind of had a computer in our house and did not enjoy it. And now, years later, 16 years later, I work in it every day. So again, just, keep an open mind, never say never. You just never know where life is going to take you and what you might get excited about down the road. That's interesting though, because you had said with the other advisor, you're like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do financial advising. Now you had the option to make your own choices and ultimately ended up doing that on your own anyways. So kind of a cool path for sure. So when you said that you were doing all in person and then you went digital, right? You went virtual, I guess. Tell us about that, because there's a lot of agents even today trying to figure that out. What I do is when we're working with automation, that's a lot for agents to wrap their head around, to try to get into that more virtual space for efficiencies and just operations and things like that. But you moved your entire operation into virtual. So how did that go?
Yeah, so it started very like caveman tech. I was essentially tracking people on Google spreadsheets. I would have like a spreadsheet of like names and then like, how many times I dialed and like if they answered and all that. But I think what set me apart was that I kind of went in on some, and I wouldn't say it's unique, a lot of people do it, but when I was talking with somebody that I knew was a good prospect, so essentially it's a name, it's a number, and there's some type of interest there. When I was talking with somebody, it didn't matter if I sold them a policy or not. I sent out a welcome packet. So this is something I did every single day. I have pictures of like stacks of envelopes. I don't even know how much I spent at the post office, a lot. So I reached out and I got branded pens. I got branded, at the time for COVID, masks. I got branded folders, brochures, lights, little tiny keychain lights, about me's, gosh, I think there's something I'm missing in there. But I put together this folder, and I was essentially at the time selling like it was one really good Medicare Advantage plan. So I was putting together like their packet that they send me, and then shoving it in there, and I was just mailing it to people. And so you get this big yellow envelope, you're opening it, right? Like, what is this? Like, what's in here? You're opening it. Nobody's not going to open that. And it's like branded and there's a bunch of stuff in there. So I was just getting people calling me back saying, yeah, okay, this sounds good. Let's go. And I'm like, okay. And I think that was unique and kind of set me apart. Granted, it cost me like 25 bucks every time I sent one out, like total in cost. And I was sending out a lot of them, but it was creating inbound, people, and I was only using my cell phone. People are calling me and saying, yeah, let's do it. People I'd already talked to, maybe some people that I didn't. And so I think that was unique and different. And so Excel sheet, that, and then as I started transitioning into, okay, I'm getting more clients, I'm getting more leads, starting to buy more leads, whatever. Then I transitioned to like a CRM, right? I was not even using a CRM at the time. I've used a million of them, and I just had to find the one that fit me, right? So started plugging into a CRM. I was not using automations. I wasn't using any of the cool stuff that CRMs come with now. I was just using it for like very basic, a database for my clients. Definitely not using it to my full potential. And then since then, I've definitely transitioned more into, okay, let's do not just phone stuff, but Zoom. So now that I'm in the finance side and it's way more personal, you have to have a process. Like, you have to. So my process has always been changing. And so it's always just been adapting and trying new things. So like now it's like when we have a lead that comes in, we have a very it's not a script. We have a very specific points that we want to follow when we have this initial call with them. From there, we book a discovery call where we discover more about them. From there, we book a financial strategy session, which is over Zoom, a little bit more personal. And then from there, we do like a proposal, or what do we see as far as some holes in your situation we can fill. And it's like a 4 or 5 part process. It could take months sometimes. But when you're in my side of the industry, that's okay, because that's all delayed gratification, which my generation has a problem with for sure. People need to get through that, but it's a lot of costs up front too. So you got to have kind of the financial side backing you. You got to have the stick-to-itiveness to have some delayed gratification over time. But when you get a check for $50,000, it's, oh, okay, this isn't too bad. And you're helping people, right? So the money is what I tell people is the byproduct of what I do. But having a good process and solving problems, if you're not solving a problem, you're creating one. Okay. So if you can't reasonably articulate you're solving that problem, why the hell are you selling that policy to begin with? Right. So really have a good process on how you can articulate that. And I think it all really just comes down with knowledge. You can have processes, you can have systems, you can have all these things, but unless you know exactly what you're doing, that's a problem.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that. And I love that you have multiple meetings. It helps build that relationship, that trust. You get to hear your customer, talk about, push back their objections and their concerns and their goals multiple times, which is great. I know a lot of advisors who would meet with a client, recommend an annuity, and sign paperwork in the same hour. And can you just imagine the difference in the quality, versus 4 or 5 appointments over months versus a 1 hour appointment. And I've seen this happen. I had a small stint at Allstate when I sold my farmer's agency in Washington under an advisor, working under someone else. Left there after 3 months, totally unethical situation, was extremely difficult for me to deal with. I have a really thick skin. I've been in finance for a long time and worked in customer service for a long time. And I cried more in that job. And I'm not a crier. Like, you can ask my husband, I don't cry. But that was a horrible situation. And I saw a lot of that. And then working in that financial space for that short period of time, going to conferences and meetings and hearing other advisors and asking them questions about basic things like participation rates and floors and caps and all those things, right? And they didn't know. They didn't know the details of the products they were selling. And I was like, this is really interesting. And it pushed me away from it. I did financial services just for a couple of years, and then in mutual funds, not annuities. But when I started learning annuities, I was just very put off by that group, by the entire situation. So it's really refreshing for me personally to hear that you have this really great process in place. And it makes sense that you've been wildly successful with that, because you build that trust over time. It's very interesting, though, to me that you didn't have a sales background, before this, had the personality for it, didn't have the business acumen before this, definitely, baptism by fire in this story, and now are wildly successful and chose the best path of that ethics and morals versus the quick and easy, because we talk to agents all the time who are putting up big numbers. And when you dive in, they're usually pushing out the quick and easy business. And that's hard to watch because we know the consumer is not usually being taken care of. So just big, that whole thing was a really big kudos to you, because I didn't know this before coming into this interview about your process, and just absolutely love it. So what software did you end up picking? Because you said you used a few different CRMs. So what do you use? What do you like for this annuity business?
So I have used, man, you name it, we've used them. Okay. I've used Agency Block. I have to remember these. I've used Redtail. I've used so many different levels of Go High Level. So right now we kind of have our own version of Go High Level. We don't sell it to anybody or anything like that. But I've done so many things. So I'm 31. I've been in the industry since 2017. And I tell people you can't tell me you can't tell me something that I probably haven't done other than TV. I haven't done any TV advertising or anything, but I've done software development, customizing CRMs, marketing platforms. I've done it all. 90% of what I do now is sales. And then the other 10% is training. So we have a platform that we train advisors on. But what we have now is essentially just a Go High Level version, just something that I wanted my own flavor on. I didn't want to plug into somebody else's. I just wanted to be able to customize it the way I wanted to. But when you do that, it's it's a lot. You got to learn all about. We don't do any HTML coding or JavaScript coding or anything like that. I don't know anything about any of that stuff. But just building out automations and texts and emails and how we can use ringless voicemails and videos and Loom. Oh, one thing that I would say really helped me. So I had my one of my biggest months I ever had was in September of 2021. I transitioned into annuities essentially full time. Okay. That stopped prospecting for Medicare. I was already doing annuities all of September, and I was going to conferences, just like you said, and seeing people talk about annuities that were doing 10 million plus and did not know what they were talking about. And I'm I can do that. I can do this. So I transitioned and I said, okay, how much could I write? In that time, I was writing a couple $1 million a year. I said, how much could I write in a month if I went full time, all in, super expensive, high intent leads? Let's do it. I ended up writing about $300,000 in commission that month. Okay. It was one of my biggest months I've ever had. Phenomenal. I attribute it to a lot of work. And I, by the way, will never do that again. I worked probably 100 hours every week. Just driving all over the freaking place, meeting with as many people as I possibly could meet with, spending probably $60,000 that month. It was nuts. Okay. Wow. It was absolutely insane.
Not sustainable for a long time.
No,
long
absolutely not. I'd be divorced. So one thing I would tell agents is there's one thing I was doing that was putting me into positions that I think other advisors weren't doing, which was when I had conversations with people, I was sending them custom videos. Okay. I would send them a text link and I would send them an email link. And it was a video. I'd sit down in front of a camera, and I got myself a decent camera. I didn't have this one at the time, but a different one with decent lighting. And I would just do an intro. Here's who I am. Here's what I do. Okay. Here's some problems we help solve. Okay. I'd like to have a conversation with you. And I got so many more responses from that. And it wasn't like I got 50% responses, but it was more than not doing that. And I had some of my biggest cases from it. Actually, one of my clients today, which I wrote last year, was a $1.7 million in annuities on a single client. And it took me a couple years, but we got there. And it was originally from, 5 phone calls he didn't answer, and then sending a video and then him texting me back and saying, okay, what times do you have available?
Wow,
stupid things like that. Yeah.
That's the thing though, right? Being very persistent, being different, standing out. taking the time. Obviously, what you're selling is, it's not an auto insurance policy. It's a much more complex product, and knowing that your client is going to be looking for a very different experience is very important as well. I love that you actually specialize in annuities because it's a complex product, right? And when if you think about, I always compare this to like doctors, right? Finance and medical. I don't know. There's like the big things in life. There's your health, and then there's your money. It kind of dictates your path in life, right? And when you talk to doctors, if they're a general, family doctor or a general physician, when it comes to like their income, that's significantly lower than the specialist, the people who just do one thing, Yep. And it's because they're great at it. It's because they're extremely good at it. It's not that you should become a specialist to chase money, but you become a specialist because you are amazing at that one thing, and people will respect that and gravitate towards it. But the video, texting, and emailing, absolutely love those video proposals. Video follow-ups, like it's so unique. It takes a little bit of time. I know so many agents who refuse to do it because they're just scared to get on camera initially, right? There's a little bit of that jitter, but when you can get past it and just be yourself, it really resonates with people. How did you kind of think of that? Did someone tell you to do that? Did you stumble upon it? An idea?
Just did it. Just an idea that came to me. Later I learned about like Loom. And I was like, oh, Loom's freaking awesome. I was doing, I had to record the video, edit it on Camtasia, and then upload it to YouTube, make it a private video, and then specifically send it to them so other people wouldn't see it.
Wow, there's a lot of steps.
Way higher, yeah. And I had to learn about like, how do you edit a video? So now I've like edited so much content. I've done that too. Yeah, it's just trial by fire. It's just staying up late and learning the stupid things. Yeah, I mean, like CRM stuff. My wife was like, "Do you sleep?" I'm like, "Not really." I just stayed up. We spent about 100 hours, roughly, with learning that stuff, and it was not during regular business hours. It was all after hours. Staying up late. And I'm not telling people to do that. Okay, I am a different breed. I am an ADHD entrepreneur. Okay, I learned something.
I just saw a video that says 35% of entrepreneurs are ADHD. We actually, it makes, so I am not diagnosed medically, but self-diagnosed for sure. For sure. Very, very, very easy to do that. But I will tell you, and there was another statistic I saw in the same speaking presentation that said it was something like we're like 300% more successful than the entrepreneurs who do not have ADHD. It's like almost like a superpower that drives us because we have to do all these things, which is great in business because you have to wear all those hats.
Right. Yeah. So it's
a good thing.
Yeah, it is. And every time I seem to my assistant, she hates it. She's like, why are you trying something new now? And I'm like, because I have to. It's like, if I don't, I get lazy. I'll start doing drugs. I don't know. I'll become an alcoholic. I have no idea.
Gosh,
okay.
I love it. My husband always jokes that I have yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, you go ahead.
I was going to say, my husband always jokes I have like a 3-year attention span. If I do the same thing, not adjusting anything for 3 years, I'll get bored, I'll quit, I'll find something new to do. And that's why I love tech. I think tech is like the thing for me because it's never the same. It's always adapting. You were going to say something about what your wife jokes about too.
I tell my wife that I would be in a ditch somewhere if I didn't meet her for one. And then if I didn't become an entrepreneur, because I have a very addictive type personality, right? I get addicted to something and I have to learn it. It's kind of part of ADHD. So like I would have been like addicted to cocaine or something. I don't know. I've never done it, but I probably.
So she kept your nose clean, and then
100%.
Luckily you started working in sales.
There you go. Yep, it's a divine thing. So yeah,
it's so funny. I love it. Well, I have absolutely loved doing this interview. It's been really informative for me because like I said, I haven't really talked to a bunch of agents like with your story. It's been very unique for me to hear. Is there anything that you would want to leave agents with? Again, the channel is Captive to Independent. So a lot of people that are going to be watching this are currently captive, maybe thinking that they want to go independent or have that inclination. Anything you want to leave them with that you wish you would have known or they should really think about before making that choice?
Well, I would say that just start doing research, right? Start asking people that are on the other side, reputable sources. What I would say is start talking to people that don't have, they don't want to recruit you. They're not going to make it sound better than it is. They're going to tell you like it's hard, right? They're going to tell you, here's what's hard. Here's how to make it easier. If anybody wants to reach out to me, not a recruiter, so I'll tell you, no problem, especially if it's Banker's Life. I think after I left Bankers, I helped probably like 10 plus people transition out of Bankers, just over social media and stuff. And you can always follow me on social media. I'm all over Facebook. I'm all over LinkedIn. And we talk about it. We talk about this stuff all the time. So yeah, reach out if you have any questions. Other than that, just do research. Don't take too big of a step first. Baby steps. Find what you want. And also, going back to the niche thing that you said, I had to try everything before I found that niche. So that's okay. Go try everything, maybe even try it twice. I've done life, I've done advanced life, I've done health, I've done under 65 health, I've done group, I've done annuities. I've done planning. So you kind of have to like try everything a little bit just to find your niche. Don't be afraid to do that, right? Don't be afraid of that.
I love it. Yeah, you can't be scared if you're going to be an entrepreneur. You just got to squash that bug right away.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Tracy, for your time. This has been so much fun. We'll get this up on the channel as soon as we possibly can. And I really appreciated that you offered for viewers to reach out to you and ask questions. I'm guessing now and today, you put all those hundreds of hours in before, and now you probably have a little better work-life balance, right? So it was short-lived. Definitely. Yeah. So do that short-lived, definitely. And then you have extra time to talk to people about your journey like Tracy does.
100%.
Thank you again. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Bye.
Thanks for having me.